to be with so many other anthropologists. As many of you who are deans and other management people in university know, very often you lose touch with your own discipline. You start going to funding opportunities and regulatory meetings, you meet with government and rich people and bankers, but you actually don't get to talk to your fellow disciplinary brothers and sisters very often. So I'm delighted to be here. Now, I want to talk about something which is posing both a moral and pragmatic dilemma for me in recent years. As an anthropologist, my job has always been to try and understand other people's worldviews, other people's way of understanding the world. This is particularly important when we are talking about how other people maintain their livelihoods. So patterns of subsistence, management of conflict. These are things that are near and dear to my heart, but I have never tried to intervene. I have never tried to tell other people how they should manage their resources, or how they should manage their conflict, or how they should regulate their communities. That's not my job as an anthropologist. My job as an anthropologist is to try and understand what they think, why they think it, why they do it. But when we are talking about environmental problems, when we are talking about the very serious environmental challenges confronting communities today, we have another dilemma. And that dilemma is that the environment has changed. And what has worked in the past clearly is not working today. So I'll give you an example. The farmers that I work with in a rain-fed area of northern Punjab, a Barani jaga hai, Barani mahalla hai, ilaka hai. This area uses a Vikrami calendar to schedule its planting, right? So they use the Hijri calendar, the Islamic calendar for their religious events. But for planting, you need a solar calendar. So they use the Vikrami calendar. This is critical to the farming production, for the farming process. And they have a particular week in that calendar when they sow their seeds. Historically, that week fell right after a period of rainfall. But that rainfall doesn't happen at that time anymore. When you talk to peasant farmers, they actually have not adjusted when they plant, because they're not planting based on rain, they're planting based on the Vikrami calendar. So you ask them, when are you planting your seeds? When are you sowing your seeds? And they say, in this week. And you say, but it's dry then. Don't you want to change for when the rains come? And they say, we don't know when the rains come, we know when our calendar is. So that kind of indigenous knowledge actually isn't fit for purpose anymore. The environment has changed. And so we have a dilemma about how do we help primary food producers without throwing out everything they know, because much of what they know, much of the local indigenous knowledge actually is particularly powerful for dealing with some aspects of this environmental change. So really, I'm always asked, why does my discipline matter? Why does anthropology matter? Why should we care what other people think, what local people think? Particularly when I work with engineers and hydrologists. They already know the answers. They think their job is to go out to local people and tell them, here's the solution, now do it. And then I come along on the project and I say, but that won't work. And it won't work because it's not sustainable. People will follow organizational rules, they will follow the kind of incentives if you put an investment in, but will it be sustainable? Will it be something that they can maintain after you have left, after the engineers go home, after the external inputs are gone? So sustainability is a critical factor in adapting to the environment, but also resilience. If we understand how local people conceive of nature, conceive of their relationship with the natural world, then we can better understand how we might intervene in ways that are resilient, so that people can adapt to future changes. Because the one thing we are very certain of is that our environment is changing. It has not changed to a new state which is now stable. We are now going into a period of much more erratic weather patterns, much less predictability, more severe storms, more severe droughts, more severe floods. Right? So what we need is not for people to have the answer, but in fact to have that resilient mechanism for adapting to changes that we know we can't predict. So let me give you just some stories, really. Some stories about how people have managed environmental resources in the past, actually fairly successfully, and actually why sometimes that isn't fit today. So there is a shrine in northern Punjab, in the little village that I lived in Attak Zilla. It's a wonderful shrine. It's at the top of a little mountain, and this shrine, the origin story of this shrine is almost something, although it's a Muslim shrine, it could almost be something that came out of a Rig Veda. It's got a really quite clear Hindu origin mythology underpinning it. It's the story of a brother and a sister who loved each other very much. The sister was the one who was in crisis, and when these marauding groups of men were coming from different villages to grab this young woman and force her into marriage, the woman went to the top of the mountain, prayed to God to save her. The mountain opened up, she went into the mountain, and then the mountain closed behind her. And so to this day, I haven't seen it myself, but people will tell you, hand on heart, absolutely honestly, that they see her chadar flapping in the wind, where the mountain accepted her. So interestingly, she's not the saint. The saint is her brother, right? Her brother, Baba Sheikh Daud, is now the saint. So this mountain is the one place in the region that has a full forest, an old growth forest. This forest has been preserved. Why? Because Baba Sheikh Daud likes trees. Shockingly, that works. If you want to maintain a forest in rural Punjab, actually it turns out you probably can put a shrine there, because everywhere you find shrines, you find forestation. Everywhere you don't have a shrine, you either have to have like a proper army guarding every little tree, because goats will gobble it all up, or you have no trees. Deforestation is a massive problem across most of the world. Unless you have some concerted effort to reforest an area, you will not be able to recreate that kind of old growth. And we know that around the world, reforestation is a major part of the decarbonization strategy. So shrines, it turns out, are a powerful way of modifying people's behavior in ways that are good for the environment. Now, how does this not work? How is this actually counterproductive? Well, we have a situation in the Barani area where the rains are much less predictable and much less frequent. So they can go 11, 12, 13, 14 months without one drop of rain sometimes, which means you have to manage the water that you've got much better. So they have the traditional rain catchment areas, these kind of traditional Punjabi things. I'm sure they have them in Sindh. The great big mounds of earth that collect rainwater. They usually don't last for a year, but they can last a while, and they're good for animal husbandry, they're good for plants, they're good for a number of things. They can cool off an area. So you typically in Punjab have a banyan tree or a bor tree on the edge of these bund, and that is the kind of village center. That can be the heart of the village. Now these are an indigenous technology, they're very old, and they're very effective. But of course, if the rains aren't coming, they won't do the trick. That's not enough. So what have some farmers done? Well, many farmers have dug tube wells. That is a modern technology. They are digging deeper and deeper and deeper to get the water up, and then they are combining that with something like a bund to store the water, typically with something to provide a shade to prevent some of the kind of dehydration, right, where the water goes off into the gas. Now that works okay, that works fine. I worked with many farmers, and younger farmers tend to adopt these kind of modern technologies to better manage water. One of my very best friends, a very dear man who I think is a kind man, a lovely good farmer, his solution was actually to go back to Baba Sheikh Daud. Instead of investing in tube wells and drip feed irrigation and some kind of modern water conservation measures, he built a house, a proper mazar for Baba Sheikh Daud. He put electricity to the top of the mountain at great expense. He put a little hut so that the murid could come and have somewhere to sleep, so that Babaji would never ever be alone. And I talked to him and I said, do you really think that's going to work? And he said, of course it'll work, Steve, of course. Because Babaji is very close to God. God will listen to Babaji. Now, I'm not saying that won't work, but I haven't yet seen it work, right? So we have a problem there, that his indigenous go-to solution is to go to Babaji, go to the shrine, pray to the shrine, invest in the shrine to solve a drought problem. Now, I'm not saying that's not a good solution, But by itself, it's clearly not as effective as also investing in drip feed irrigation, also investing in some other water conservation measures. So this is my moral dilemma. Do I go back to my very dear friend and say, look, I'm not trying to insult your faith, but your faith is not enough here? Because that's not my place to say, and I will never say that to anyone. However, pragmatically, I want his crops to succeed. So that particular conceptual model of nature, where God is ultimately at the center of everything, and the solution to everything is to ask God, actually is not fit for purpose here, because I think there are many, many examples of that's not how God operates. God operates through other mechanisms. And so God wants us, maybe I should not talk about this. God wants us to use drip feed irrigation. God wants us to use modern technology, because that's also a gift from God, right? So I need to not insult his faith, but actually integrate his faith into a very different conceptual model of nature. So that's one story. The other area where I think we fundamentally must understand the social and cultural phenomena around managing the environment is the social relations. So I spent the first 10 years of my time working in this village. I've worked in this village for 26 years now. The first 10 years, I spent most of my time looking at land conflict and conflict between cousins, right? So this kind of very close cousin, both friendship and rivalry.